that we can take care of ourselves and each other, so we're ready to take care of Mom when she gets out of surgery.
Give this video a thumbs up. The atmosphere inside Nick Newman's hospital room is already heavy with fear, uncertainty, and unanswered questions when Nikki Newman walks through the door and realizes that Marie is there. For Nikki, seeing Marie standing so close to her son's hospital
He'd probably be even quicker to buy you a beer.
Surprise. It feels like a line has been crossed, especially at a moment when Nick is vulnerable and unable to protect himself. Nikki has spent every ounce of her strength trying to keep her family together, and now she believes someone from outside that family is threatening the fragile peace surrounding Nick's recovery. What happens next could become one of those explosive confrontations that changes relationships long after the shouting stops. Marie may have expected tension, but she probably did not expect Nikki to walk into the room with anger written all over her face. Nikki looks at Marie, then at Nick lying in the hospital bed, and suddenly her protective instincts take control. She does not want excuses. She does not want explanations. She wants Marie to understand exactly where she stands. "Stay away from my child," Nikki could demand, making it unmistakably clear that she believes Nick needs protection more than ever. The words would immediately transform the mood in the room. Marie could be stunned because she may have believed she had every right to be there. But Nikki sees the situation differently. To her, this is not simply about Marie visiting Nick. It is about everything that has happened, everything Nikki suspects, and everything she fears could happen next. Nikki has never been someone who quietly watches while her children face danger,
we can take care of ourselves and each other, so we're ready to take care of Mom when she gets out of surgery.
She can become fiercely protective, and Nick's current condition makes that instinct even stronger. The hospital room therefore becomes the perfect setting for a confrontation because there is nowhere for either woman to hide behind polite conversation. Every emotion is exposed. Every accusation carries more weight. Every silence becomes suspicious. Nikki could step closer to Marie and tell her that Nick has enough problems without having another source of pressure surrounding him. Marie might attempt to defend herself, insisting that she cares about Nick and has no intention of hurting him. But Nikki is not necessarily ready to hear it. From Nikki's perspective, intentions are meaningless if the result could place Nick in greater emotional or physical danger. That is why her warning could sound so severe. She is not simply angry. She is terrified. Fear is often what drives Nikki's strongest reactions, and seeing Nick lying helplessly in a hospital bed could bring every protective emotion rushing to the surface. The situation becomes even more complicated because Nick is not in a position to intervene. If he were awake, he might tell his mother to back down or explain Marie's side of the story. But with Nick unable to control the conversation, Nikki feels responsible for speaking on his behalf. That could make Marie feel as though she is being judged without having an opportunity to explain herself. Yet Nikki may believe that protecting Nick comes before being fair to Marie. This creates a fascinating emotional conflict because neither woman necessarily has to be completely wrong. Marie could genuinely believe she belongs near Nick, while Nikki could genuinely believe she is doing what any mother would do when her son is in danger. The real question becomes whether Nikki's protective instincts have gone too far. Nikki's warning could also reveal something deeper about her relationship with Nick. Nick may be an adult man, but to Nikki he will always be her son. She remembers the younger version of him, the mistakes he made, the battles he survived, and the countless times he put himself in danger trying to protect the people he loved. Seeing him lying unconscious or weakened in a hospital bed could make Nikki feel powerless. And when Nikki Newman feels powerless, she often searches for something she can control. In this situation, confronting Marie becomes that outlet. She cannot control Nick's condition. She cannot force his recovery to happen faster. She cannot guarantee that tomorrow will bring good news. But she can tell Marie to leave. She can draw a boundary. She can make one thing clear. That is precisely why the confrontation could become so emotional. Marie, meanwhile, may refuse to simply walk away. If she believes Nikki is treating her unfairly, she could finally push back. Rather than becoming intimidated by Nikki's anger, Marie might tell her that Nick is not property and that Nikki does not get to decide who is allowed to care about him. That response could send Nikki's anger to another level. Imagine the tension as Nikki turns toward Marie and realizes that the woman standing before her is not frightened enough to leave. Nikki may have expected one warning to settle the matter, but Marie's refusal to back down could transform the argument into a full emotional showdown. The hospital staff might notice the tension, while family members could become concerned that the confrontation is becoming too intense for Nick's room. But the most important part of the scene would be the emotional battle between these two women. Nikki represents family, history, loyalty, and protection. Marie represents a challenge to Nikki's control over the situation. Neither side is willing to surrender. The phrase "stay away from my child" therefore becomes more than a dramatic line. It becomes a declaration that Nikki is prepared to fight for Nick, regardless of the consequences. There is also a possibility that Nikki knows more than she is saying. Soap operas rarely place two characters in a hospital room for a confrontation without giving the scene another layer. Nikki may have heard something that changed her opinion of Marie. Perhaps someone warned her. Perhaps she discovered information about Marie's connection to Nick. Or perhaps Nikki simply noticed behavior that made her suspicious. Whatever the reason, her certainty suggests that this confrontation could be the beginning rather than the end of a much larger mystery. Marie's reaction could become especially important. If she immediately leaves, viewers might wonder whether Nikki's accusation hit a nerve. If Marie stays and fights back, viewers may begin questioning whether she has a hidden agenda or whether she is simply refusing to be bullied. And if Marie makes one shocking statement about Nick's situation, Nikki could suddenly realize that she has been missing an important piece of the puzzle. That possibility could completely change the direction of the storyline. The strongest soap opera confrontations are rarely about what is said on the surface. They are about what the characters are afraid to admit. Nikki may be afraid of losing Nick. Marie may be afraid of losing her connection to him. Both women could be fighting over the same thing from completely different emotional positions. Nikki wants safety. Marie wants recognition. Nick is caught between them without even being able to speak. That triangle creates enormous dramatic potential. The hospital itself becomes almost like a pressure cooker. Every whispered conversation matters. Every glance toward Nick's bed carries emotional meaning. Even the sound of medical equipment could make Nikki's fear more obvious. She may look at her son and soften for a moment, only to turn back toward Marie with renewed determination. That contrast would show viewers that Nikki's anger is not coming from hatred. It is coming from love mixed with fear. However, love does not always produce calm decisions. Sometimes it produces the most reckless ones. Nikki could potentially make a statement that she later regrets. She might threaten to involve the rest of the Newman family. She could tell Marie that if she does not leave Nick alone, she will have to answer to Victor, Victoria, Adam, and everyone else who considers Nick family. That would raise the stakes dramatically because Marie would understand that she is no longer dealing with one angry woman. She could be stepping into a much larger family conflict. And everyone knows that when the Newman family unites around one of their own, the consequences can be enormous. Still, there is another possibility that makes the confrontation even more interesting. What if Nikki's warning actually pushes Marie closer to Nick instead of driving her away? Sometimes attempts to control a situation only make the other person more determined. Marie could interpret Nikki's hostility as proof that something is being hidden. Instead of leaving Genoa City, she could start asking questions. Instead of distancing herself from Nick, she could become determined to uncover why Nikki is so threatened by her presence. That could create a new mystery surrounding Nick's hospital ordeal. Perhaps Marie begins investigating events that Nikki desperately wants left alone. Perhaps she discovers something that even the Newman family does not know. Suddenly, Nikki's warning would have consequences far beyond the hospital room. It could accidentally open a door to a secret that nobody is prepared to confront. Nick's condition also adds urgency because every passing moment gives the characters more reason to make emotional decisions. Nikki could spend hours sitting beside Nick, talking to him even though he cannot respond. She might remind him of his childhood, tell him that his family is waiting for him, and promise that she will not let anyone hurt him. Those quiet moments would provide a powerful contrast to the explosive confrontation with Marie. They would remind viewers that underneath Nikki's fierce exterior is a mother who is deeply frightened by the possibility that her son may not return to the life he once knew. That emotional vulnerability could make Nikki's earlier outburst feel more understandable. At the same time, Marie could have her own private reaction after leaving the room. She may feel humiliated, angry, or determined to prove Nikki wrong. If Marie believes she truly cares about Nick, being told to stay away could feel like an unbearable insult. She could decide that she will no longer allow Nikki or the Newman family to dictate her choices. That decision could set up another confrontation later, perhaps one even more explosive than the first. The biggest question is what Nick would say if he could hear everything happening around him. Would he agree with Nikki? Would he defend Marie? Would he resent his mother for interfering? Or would he finally reveal a truth that neither woman expects? His eventual return to consciousness could therefore become one of the most anticipated moments in the storyline. Nick could wake up and immediately realize that something has changed. He might sense the tension between his mother and Marie without understanding why. Nikki could try to protect him from the truth, but Nick is not someone who enjoys being kept in the dark. Once he starts asking questions, Nikki may have to explain exactly why she confronted Marie. And that conversation could force Nikki to confront an uncomfortable possibility. Maybe she acted out of fear rather than facts. That would give the storyline a strong emotional dimension because Nikki could eventually have to decide whether protecting Nick means making decisions for him or trusting him to make his own decisions. With every small movement becoming a major event. That would allow the young and the restless to build suspense gradually rather than resolving everything in a single episode. For viewers, the biggest question would remain painfully simple: will Nick open his eyes? Nikki would desperately want a yes. Victor would demand one. His siblings would pray for one. But until Nick regains consciousness, nobody can know what the future holds. That uncertainty is exactly what could make this storyline so emotionally powerful. In my view, the strongest direction would not be to treat Nick's condition as a quick shock designed only to frighten the audience. Instead, the story should use the crisis to examine the Newman family's relationships and show what happens when their usual power struggles suddenly become irrelevant. Nick's possible coma could force Victor and Nikki to confront their deepest fears, while giving Victoria, Adam, and the rest of the family an opportunity to put old grudges aside. It could also create a major turning point for Nick if he survives and eventually wakes. Imagine him opening his eyes after everyone has spent days believing he might never respond. Imagine Nikki being the first person he sees. Imagine Victor standing nearby, unable to hide his relief. That kind of moment could become one of the most emotional Newman family scenes in a long time. Yet until that happens, the danger remains. Nick is still unconscious. Nikki has already reached an emotional breaking point, and Victor is facing a situation he cannot simply control. The Newman family has been shaken to its foundation, and the next medical update could change everything. Will Nick finally show a meaningful sign of consciousness, or will the doctors deliver even more difficult news? Could Nikki's emotional collapse force Victor to realize just how fragile his family has become? And if Nick does wake up, will he remember what happened and emerge from this crisis determined to change his life? The answers could lead to a major new chapter in Genoa City, because sometimes the greatest turning points happen when a family is pushed to the edge. For now, one thing is certain: everyone is waiting for Nick to wake up, Nikki is refusing to lose hope, and Victor is preparing for whatever comes next. The Newman family may be facing one of its darkest moments, but as long as Nick continues to fight, there is still a reason to believe that this story is not over. And if that first sign of consciousness finally comes, it may arrive at the exact moment when everyone has almost stopped believing it is possible. The waiting becomes even more difficult as the Newman family settles into an uncomfortable routine at the hospital, where every sound from Nick's room seems capable of changing the emotional atmosphere in an instant. Nikki refuses to leave for long, convinced that Nick needs to know his mother is there even if he cannot open his eyes. She talks to him quietly, reminding him of the years they have shared and telling him that everyone is still fighting for him. Victor watches from a distance, trying to remain strong, but even he cannot hide how deeply the situation is affecting him. For once, the Newman patriarch has no business strategy, no carefully constructed plan, and no enemy he can intimidate into submission. His only concern is his son. The doctors continue monitoring Nick closely, explaining that unconscious patients can sometimes show unexpected changes, but they also warn the family not to assume that every movement or fluctuation means a recovery is beginning. Those words create an agonizing balance between hope and fear. Nikki desperately wants to believe every positive sign is meaningful, while Victor tries to prepare himself for every possible outcome. That difference in how they handle the crisis could create emotional tension between them, even though both are fighting for exactly the same thing. Then comes a moment that leaves Nikki convinced something has changed. While she is speaking to Nick, she notices what appears to be a slight movement. At first, she wonders if she imagined it because she has been sitting beside him for so long. She calls for Victor, and suddenly the room becomes filled with nervous anticipation. The medical team checks Nick's condition and carefully examines the monitors. They do not immediately declare that Nick is waking up, but they acknowledge that the response deserves attention. For Nikki, that tiny possibility is enough to restore a measure of hope. She grips Nick's hand and tells him that he has to keep fighting. Victor stands beside her, silently watching his son's face, perhaps afraid to become too hopeful too quickly. The Newman family has learned through years of crises that good news can sometimes be followed by another devastating turn, so nobody dares celebrate yet. Outside the room, the situation begins affecting everyone differently. Victoria struggles to accept how quickly her family's world has changed. She has spent much of her life dealing with her father's intense expectations and the complicated relationships among the Newman siblings, but Nick's condition makes those conflicts feel insignificant. She begins thinking about the last time she spoke with her brother and wonders whether there was something she should have said differently. Adam experiences a similar emotional conflict. His relationship with Nick has always been complicated, filled with competition, resentment, and moments of unexpected loyalty. Yet now Adam cannot simply think of Nick as a rival. He is his brother, and the possibility of losing him forces Adam to confront feelings he might normally keep buried. He may not express those emotions openly, but his presence at the hospital could reveal more than words ever could. Marie could calmly ask Nikki what she is afraid of. That question could completely change the atmosphere. Nikki may expect anger, but Marie could respond with confidence. She could tell Nikki that she will not be intimidated simply because she is a Newman. She could insist that Nick deserves to know the truth and that no one has the right to make decisions for him while he is unable to speak. Those words could leave Nikki speechless for a moment. The real danger for Nikki is that Marie may be right about one thing: Nick will eventually wake up, and when he does, he will want answers. Nikki cannot keep the confrontation hidden forever. If Nick learns that his mother ordered Marie to stay away, he could become angry. Even if Nikki acted from love, Nick may see the situation as another example of his family trying to control his life. That could create emotional distance between mother and son at exactly the wrong time. Nikki could therefore find herself trapped between two choices. She can continue pushing Marie away, risking Nick's anger, or she can step back and allow Nick to decide for himself. For someone as fiercely protective as Nikki, stepping back may be the hardest thing she has ever done. There is also the possibility that Marie knows something about Nick's condition that Nikki has not been told. If that turns out to be true, Nikki's warning could become a major mistake. Marie may have been trying to tell someone important information before Nikki interrupted her. Perhaps she has discovered something about Nick's recent circumstances that could affect his recovery. Perhaps she knows